Hello guys, in today's tutorial we'll be giving to our player lives so you can die several times. But first I want to show you what happened when the player died. So whenever the player died, so let's grab something deadly like these spikes, and because they have this deadly tag over here, the player will die. So play, and when the player reaches the spikes, you can see that this error happens because there's no text. There's no restart text because supposedly whenever a player dies there will appear something like press R to restart, and we don't have that text anymore because that was from Unity 4.5, and I think when I upgraded to Unity 4.6 that text disappeared. And to fix that text thing, just go to game object UI text, and I don't really know anything about 4.6 UI yet. I just know this one thing about text. So yep, look at your luck. But for what I understand, we created a canvas, and that canvas has a text, and the text is whatever we want. And basically the canvas represents the screen. So if our text is here, it should appear in here. As you can see, you can barely see, but let me change color to white so that you can see. As you can see, it's over there. Anyways, we're going to type here, press R to restart, and these positions over here, if we put it at 0, 0, 0, it should appear in the center of the screen, like so. And now we're going to attribute this to the player. Over here where it says the restart text, it has non-game object. Now you put the text over here. And the last thing that we want to do is to make this text uh, disabled, so we can see it. Only when the player dies, then the script activates it. So if a player dies, the animation plays and it shows the text for us to restart. Now let me show you what happens in the code. So if we go into our player, into the simple player 0 scripts, remember that for the player to die, I had to go into something called something with the delete tag. So the script detects that the player dies whenever it triggers, when it enters something, when he stays on the trigger, or when he collides with something. Now, one thing that we're going to do right now is that this part over here, we don't need this one because this one is just the exact copy of this one. The only thing is that this one happens in the first frame. Whenever the player enters, it immediately dies, and this one happens in the frame after. I mean, one frame isn't a big difference, is it? So just delete this one, and now I'm going to explain you what happens in here. So basically, if the other tag is deadly and the player isn't dead yet, then the velocity of the player is reset, so it doesn't move anymore. The death animation plays, which is this animation that you've just seen over here. This one is given a force that you just saw too, and this here is dead equals true. And the last thing about that stuff is here, which is a guard clause. And what a guard clause is that it stops any code after that to play. So what this guard clause does is it detects when the player is dead, and it shows the text over here, that text, and enables you to press R to restart. And this return over here makes so that all the code inside the void update function won't be executed. And this is how the death of the player worked. Now we're going to give him some lives. So the first thing that we're going to do is, so now we're going to create a few variables, and we're going to create a public int called lives. We're going to also create an bool called isImmune, public bool isImmune. This one doesn't have to be public, but it's just here so that I can show you. And we're going to also create two floats. One that is a immune counter, and I'm going to explain this why I'm creating all these variables right now. And one that is a immune time. So basically, imagine that our player has several lives. Then, whenever you would remember for our player to die, he has to enter. He has to stay on the trigger. Over here, our player has to stay on the trigger. So imagine that he has like 3 lives. This is our player. When he goes into here, dun, 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 in 3 frames, he loses all the lives, and we don't want that to happen. What we want to do is, whenever our player collides with something deadly, we want to activate that immune time where the player can't be killed, and that's what the immune counter is for. So first off, save this script over here. So what we're going to do right now is here on the on trigger stay 2D. Remember this def code over here. We're going to create here else if below it. So else if other.tag equals deadly. We're also going to have to change the if clause above, but wait a second. And lives greater than 1. So if our player has 2 or more lives, then something will happen. So something will happen. And by the way, for our player to die, we have to add another condition in here, which is his lives has to be less or equal to 1. So if his lives are 1, then they will be 0, and if they are 0, they will be -1, and we don't want that. And supposedly this won't ever happen, but you don't know, sometimes in this game weird stuff happens. So just type in here inside the first clause lives equals 0, like that. Okay, and now we're going to make our stuff in here. So first off, we're going to make the lives decrease, so lives minus minus, and this will decrement 1 life from the lives. And I just saved it, and if I go here into the player script over here, I can see all those variables I've just created, and imagine there are 1,000, 100, and then the lives will decrease like that, as you can see. And this is kind of how it works, health bar, kinda. But this is not what I want to do. I want to make that immune thing. So we want this, and whenever our player enters into a deadly thing and he has more than 1 life, then we want the is immune variable to turn true. So that and now we're going to program a counter with this. So, and where that counter will be, well, we can make it in the beginning of the update function. So what we have to do first is immune. So if the player has just been damaged and is now immune, then we want the immune counter, which is the counter or the timer or whatever you want to call it, to be minus equal the time dot delta time. And what this will do is just decrease it for each frame. It will decrease the time of that frame, so it's just like a normal timer that goes down like so. And then if immune counter is less than 0, which means that less or equal to 0, which means that the timer has just reached 0, then what we want to do is make the immune variable false. So is immune, the player is no longer immune, false, and we want this immune counter to be reset to whatever was the initial value, the immune time. So immune counter equals immune time. And the immune time, remember that is a public value that we can change, and we're going to make it for default 1.5 seconds, like that. So it's something noticeable. but still this isn't still implemented on the onTriggerStay function. So using this thing, we're going on to the onTriggerStay over here to when our player loses lives, and we want him only to lose lives whenever he eats something deadly, he has more than one life, and he isn't immune, because if he is immune he should lose lives. This way, if I go into here, all should be working fine. As you can see, the immune time is equal to the immune counter. So if I go into the specs, remember that my lives are 100, like that. You can see that the timer resets. For example, as you can see, the lives are now 97, and I go into the specs once, the lives are 96, and now I have a time 1.5 seconds of immunity. And then I go into there again, and if I stay there the 1.5 seconds, after that time the lives will decrease. As you can see over here, the lives are decreasing. And of course that you can make these lives appear here in the screen like a UI, but just like I told you, I don't know much about the new UI stuff, so I just going to create here a function called onGUI, just like we did before, and we're going to type here GUI layout dot label, and that label will be the, and I'm going to make these spaces over here because there's already this 0 over here, which is the score, because there's some collectibles that our player could catch, and I'm going to make those spaces over there, and then type here lives space and plus, and now lives, the variable lives that somehow isn't auto completing. Oh, there you go. And this way the lives should appear in that, and they do. Lives 100, 99, 98, and so on and so forth. And with this we made our player successfully have lives, which is good. I'm just going to show you one mistake, one little one little bug that we made. For example, if my lives are 2 and I go into the spikes, let me show you, the player dies. And this is a simple bug that can simply be fixed in the script by doing this. So remember, we had this, and for a player to lose lives he had to have more than one life and not be immune and collide with something deadly. So imagine this, the player has 2 lives, so this happens, and then the code goes all the way up and goes into here, and then it checks for this thing over here. Now remember, the player has 1 life and is supposedly immune because he has just hit something deadly. So if other dot tag is deadly, and the player isn't dead and his lives are 1, which they are, then the player will die. Well, but the player is immune, so he shouldn't die. So all you have to do is to add here a new condition, so the player isn't immune. This way, he only dies when he has 1 life. Let me show you. And as you can see, after 1.5 seconds, he dies, just like pretended. And right now we have added this new mechanic of our player losing lives, but we can't quite see that our player is immune. If you are a player, if you are playing this game, you shouldn't know. And what we're going to do is to make our player flash between his normal color and white while he's immune. Now we could do this through code or through an animation, and we're going to just create an animation for it because it's simply easier. And but to do that, I can't use this sprite render over here because this sprite render only works to tint the player. I can, for example, if I drag this thing all the way to the red, it only makes him kind of red, not totally red, which is cool. The only color that can make the player be totally something is the black color. So if our player is black, our player is black. But any other color doesn't work. And to fix this issue, I actually looked it up, and there's this guy called, I don't know his name, YWord, and he made this shader over here that I don't know the first thing about how this shader works. We're just going to implement it in our game. And what this shader does is exactly that. It can change the player's color to an exact color, to one color only. And what we're going to do to implement this shader over here, by the way, the link's in the description. We're going to the project assets, and we're going to create here a shader. Where is the shader? There you go. And name it what you named it over there. What was it? Default color flash. So name that over there. Default color flash. Open it. Like I said, I don't know the first thing about shaders. Just copy it and shut up. And thank him later. Thank that guy, the YWord guy. And copy all this shader thing into there. There you go. Save it. And now to apply a shader to our player, we can't just apply it like bam. We can't. It doesn't work like that. What he has to do first is to create another material. So create material and drag this shader into that material that just created to apply it. So like that. And now this material has that shader. And now drag this material to our player. We can name it first color player or something like that. And drag it into the player over here. And nothing has changed right now. But if I click our player, its previous material was sprite default. Now it's color player, which is that material over there. And if you drag all the way down in the inspector, you'll see this little thing over here, which is the shader. And what the guy after that made the shader did was he made a slider to make it so that to make you choose what's the percentage of flash color that you want, and we made the flash color that you wanted like this, and now it can be any color just like we wanted. We're going to use white, but you can do it with whatever the color you want. And change this back to normal because that's what we want it to be. And now we're going to create an animation. Make sure that you have the player selected. So click on the player. And now we're going to create an animation. Click on here. Create new clip. And name it player 2 flashes. Because it will be flashing. Now click on add curve. And we'll be using the sprite renderer. And we'll be using the flash amount. Because this is that little slider over here that makes the player change color like that. And with this curve created, we're going now to animate it. Now remember, we want it to be half the time white and half the time normal, so just go copy this frame into here. So this way the player is half the time at 0, which means that the flash amount is 0, which means that he has its original color. And then in the exactly next frame of this one, so copy this thing over here and put it like that. Its flash amount will be 1, and the player will be white. And then in the last frame, we want this to also be white. So the player is now half the time white, half the time normal. But let me show you something. If I play this right now, you can see that sometimes there's this little interpolation where our player isn't normal nor white. He has this weird black color, and that can be fixable. Let me just explain what that is. So basically how this animation works and all the other animations is by curves. So if you go into this curves tab over here and click in here, and then you have this curve over here, and as you can see here, we want our curves to stay all the way into here with 0 flash amount, and then we want it to go straight up, not like this. We want it to go straight up, and here we want it to be normal again. And the way to fix this is just by click on a frame, right click, move tangents, constant, and that line gets straightened, and click on this frame over here, right click, move tangents, constant, that line gets also straightened. And this line over here has automatically been straightened because we straightened both tangents of this keyframe, so that makes that automatically. And if I play right now, you can see that animation is like that. It's a little slow, but we can fix that in the animator. Now, one thing that this does is that while this animation is playing, if it were to be in here, if we made it so that it could go from any state from here whenever the player got damaged, then when this animation played, none of the other animations would play, so the player will appear bugged. We could still move the player, but he will always be flashing, and he wouldn't be playing this animation or any other animation. So what we want to do is to right click on this animation over here, copy it, and we're going to make a new layer of animations. So add to the list, and we just made a new layer, you can call it flash, which happens when the player flashes, and place that layer over here. And as you can see, it's default. This is the default layer, and as you can see, if I play the game, the animation doesn't play. And why? Because the weight on this flash layer is 0, and we want to make it 1. This way, if I play, we can still move the player as we wanted, but that flash happens. Now we only have to make this flash only happen at a certain point in the game. So we need to make a transition from any state to the flash state, and we're going to also have to create a new animation which will be empty. We don't even have to put anything in there, and we're going to make it the default, and then it goes from the player flashes to this transition whenever the something happens. And what will that something be? Well, it will be one of these animation parameters that we have already created in another tutorials. So create a bool called isImmune. Let's actually make it a different name so that you don't confuse it. Immune, just like that. And now in the code, in the simple player code, which is the player's code, we want this animation to start whenever our player eats something deadly. So right in here, whenever our player eats something deadly and is not going to die, type anim.setBool, and we want to set the bool immune to be equal to true. And by the way, remember that we have to have already added this anim thing in the top. Let me show you. This is from another tutorial. I typed here on the variable zone animator anim, and in the start I instantiated that animator so that the anim variable is the get component anim of that player. So which means that the anim is actually this animator over here, and this way we can access these parameters over here and change this. Anyways, set the player to be immune, and when the player is immune, this transition over here, so let's go into immune, happens, so the player flashes will happen, and then when the player is not immune, then it will go to this no animation thing. It has no animation, as you can see, so it will just do nothing. And when will it go to that nothing animation? Well, in the top, when the timer reaches 0. So whenever the time is 0 equals false, just like that. Save. And right now, if I go into something deadly, the animation plays, as you can see, and then when I stop being dead, it goes back to normal. Now The animation is a bit slow, so let's just click on its animation over here. So let's just click on here. So let's change it like to, let's say, 4 times faster. And this way, when our player dies and our player gets damaged, it flashes this way, which is actually what we wanted, and then it goes back to normal, just like pretended. The last thing that we want to do is to make our player also have this immunity thing whenever he collides, not triggers, when he collides into something. So let's go to the script of the player, and here it was our on trigger stay thing, and we have to make a particularly exact copy into the on collision stay. But first we have to delete this thing over here, because before when our player hadn't that immune time, he would just die when he entered the collision, not stayed. So we can delete this thing and these two. So we're going to delete all of this code. Make sure to delete this thing over here. So also like that. Save, and now copy all of this code in the on trigger stay. So copy all of this, paste it here, and replace the trigger to collision and the collider to collision to D, and here it says other, because this is a collision to D, not a collider to D. We're going to access the other.gameObject.tag and not only other.tag. So other.tag there, other.gameObject.tag here, save. Now let's just see if this works. Go to Unity, uh, and click on the spikes. Where are the spikes? There you go. And I'm going to make them not a trigger. Hit play. Click on the player so we can see what happens here. If I jump on it, you can see that I have that immune time, and after some time, I can lose a life again. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Any requests, put them in the comments too. See you next time. Goodbye.